Hello and welcome. My name is Dorota Hall. I'm an associate professor at the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. And this is the event organized by our institute. This is an open talk by Ksenia Medvedeva, who is a sociologist of religion, who focuses her research on various aspects of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And Ksenia is a Marie Skłodowska-Curie Pacific Co-Fund Fellow here at our institute, which means she conducts a 2-year project under my supervision, but Ksenia is quite independent, I must say, and her research is on the environmental engagement of Eastern Orthodox churches in the United States and in Greece. Ksenia has completed her PhD dissertation at the Freie Universität Berlin, and her dissertation was also related to those topics. I mean, to the Eastern Orthodox monasteries in the United States. So this Pacific project now is a kind of follow-up. And Ksenia will talk about her research. Then Marco Castagnetto was kind enough to agree to be a discussant to Ksenia's talk. Marco is an adjunct lecturer and in the master's program for religious studies and intercultural mediation at the University of Turin in Italy. And he researches actually a variety of issues, including new religious movements from the sociological standpoint, right? He also explores issues related to religion and ecology. That's why he's here with us now. And also European traditionalist phenomena and their connection to religion and politics, as well as soteriological philosophies of India in relation to Western esotericism studies. He authored a book related to those issues. The book is titled The Lotus and the Sword, Aurobindo Ghosh's Thought and Its Reception in the West. So it's very nice to have you here, Marco.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you. Our plan is that first Ksenia will be talking like for between half an hour and 40 minutes, more or less. Then Marco, the floor will be yours. Use your time. It might be like 15 minutes, a bit less, a bit more. It's like, yeah, to comment on what you hear from Ksenia. Then I think Ksenia would like to respond, and we will open the discussion like to other people. Maybe people would like to make some comments or ask questions. Yeah, we are here to just nicely talk about things that we have today. So Ksenia, the floor is yours. You're invited to start your presentation.
Thank you. I will share it a little bit later, but first I will say that, first of all, in the chat, I put information about the workshop in June. It's like an invitation. If you're in Warsaw, you're welcome to attend this international workshop, and the program is in the chat. I live in Poland now, and here I got involved into several local ecological initiatives run by the Catholic Church. I have almost completed the Laudato Si Animators course, which is a spiritual formation and leadership training program that prepares advocates for environmental action in parishes. The course was organized by Catholics for Environmental organization, which unites Polish eco-activists in Catholic parishes. During the course, I learned that out of approximately 10,000 Catholic parishes in Poland, about 125 communities are registered as green parishes, which means that they have some sort of ecological initiatives going on. I also learned that this online lecture is accidentally happening during the Laudato Si week, which is which hosts various Catholic eco-events organized all over the world between May 21st and 28th. Next week, I'm hopefully participating in a Catholic eco camp, which will be held in a famous Catholic eco village of Grzybowo. So I just want to say that a lot is done on on ecology in different religions, religious traditions, and spiritual communities as well. And today, I would like to present The project that I've been carrying at the the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology at the Polish Academy of Sciences, and it's dedicated to the study of environmental activities carried out in the Eastern Orthodox Church. So the first goal of the project is to explore different ideas, ideals, and values that motivate Orthodox believers to engage in eco-agenda, as well as ideas that prevent them from joining and from this kind of engagement that comes an obstacle. The second goal is to study how these ideas are brought to life in practice, what empirical examples of eco-practice exist, and how eco-ideas are received by Orthodox actors, how they adapt and adjust in the Orthodox context, and what challenges arise in the process. To achieve my goals, I carried out qualitative research and collected data using methods of interview and participant observation. I conducted 21 interviews with Orthodox believers involved in various environmental initiatives. Of them, 7 are priests and monastics, 14 are lay people, 12 actors are involved in projects in the United States, and 9 in Greece. And from what I have learned, the most kind of ecologically active Orthodox sites globally are the Church of Alexandria in Africa, the metropolis of Demetrius in Greece, which is a region in central Greece, and the Greek Archdiocese of America. And that is why I conducted a 2-month fieldwork in the United States and in Greece as locations where there is something to study on the topic. So I visited local parishes, I visited monasteries, I visited offices of local Orthodox eco-initiatives, and I also stayed with Orthodox families who are involved in environmental initiatives. One of the places I visited in Greece is on the slide. It's a church parish which is known as the first Green Parish in Greece. Green Parish is a top-down project initiated by the local metropolis, which is like a church district, in collaboration with the WWF and the local Theological Academy. The priest who is in charge of the project says that its goal is to make ecology an everyday activity and to focus on the local level in order to make people more aware and more responsible for the problem. He says that when it comes to ecological problems, we usually speak on the global level, we say general things. But on the local level, there are few things that are done. And that is why the Green Parish Project wants to facilitate and to promote initiatives on the local level. But when I visited this place, I learned that the parish organized a film screening and an online conference on the topic, as well as a series of lectures on faith and ecology for their parishioners. But I also learned that these events were poorly attended. In Max Weber's terminology, the priest who runs the project can be better described as a bureaucratic leader who was appointed as an administrator to run the project, rather than like a charismatic leader who is on fire about the Green Parish project. Some parishioners got interested in this idea and offered to revise waste management practices in the parish. But the good thing is that being a top-down project, the Green Parish in Greece is an attempt to make a systematic change on the level of a metropolis. When I visited the parish a year ago, their plan was to install solar panels in all parishes of the region and thus to create a faith-based energy community. But during my visit, the metropolis was just at the stage of preparing paperwork for installing solar panels. So this field site did not really give me a lot of examples of what I call lived environmentalism, of how environmental ethics is lived out in religious communities on a daily basis. And that is why I set off to another location, which is a monastery in central Greece. And it was recommended to me as an ecological monastery. The monastery is located in the countryside on top of a mountain. The community has about 20 nuns, and they take care of 400 fruit trees. They have several beehives. They have farm animals, like just a rural Orthodox monastery. Considering the topic of my presentation, I think it's important to say that the nuns are climate refugees. Initially, the community was located near Athens, but when it became too hot there, they lost several cows due to heat wave and eventually moved to a new location in central Greece where I visited them. The unique fact about this Orthodox community is that the nuns indeed try to live ecologically. Their lifestyle is not just rural. they are informed about the current ecological discussions. For example, the nuns collect seeds of, and they have a seed bank of different plants, old plants, and they say they do it to fight genetically modified products. They celebrate the Earth Day on September the 1st, which was proclaimed as the Day of Prayer for Creation in 1989 in the Orthodox Church, and also actually in 2015 by the Catholic Church. So on these days, the nuns decorate the main icons in the church, sometimes with cherry tomatoes, as they told me, and organize seeds exchange in the monastery. And when I visited them, they also, you can see it in the photograph, they also gave me some seeds. So the nuns educate themselves about nature protection and organize international conferences on seeds and farming in their monastery. So if we kind of zoom out a little bit, I have described two eco-communities with two different ecological conversion models. The Green Parish is a top-down initiative that wants to make a systematic change in the area, starting from one parish and spreading to other parishes in their church district. The monastery, on the contrary, is an example of a bottom-up grassroots initiative. These two communities, the Green Parish and the Eco Monastery, were not involved in environmental action from the beginning. They became involved in ecology at a certain point. And my question is, what facilitated the ecological conversion of these two communities? Well, in case of the parish, as I said, it was an administrative decision. And in case of the monastery, the factor that facilitated the environmental engagement were convert nuns, especially German nuns who joined the monastery and introduced certain environmental practices. So the monastery is known for its international character. And as you can see in the photograph, this is a photo of the entrance of the monastery. You see the flags of the countries where the nuns come from. They come from the US, Australia, Great Britain, Germany, Russia, Estonia, Lebanon, and they even have a Chinese nun and a Japanese nun. And this is very, very rare, very unusual for an Orthodox monastery to be so international. When I talked with the abbess and asked her how the international character affects the life in a monastery, she was very quick to say that it doesn't. She said that the nuns come to learn, they come to adapt. But I figured out that it's not entirely correct. Some of the environmental practices at the monastery were actually introduced by international sisters, and they did not exist from the beginning. So initially, this monastery was just a small Greek community with all Greek nuns. And the German nuns, the German sisters, were the first internationals to join the monastery and brought recycling with them. Before that, Greek sisters barely recycled any waste, neither they recycled food leftovers for compost. And when I talked with one of the Greek nuns, she said, quote, "As Greeks, we didn't know that composting. We never used trash from the kitchen for that," end of quote. So what is trash for Greek nuns is actually like a resource for the German nuns. And this monastery is just one of many examples of how environmental initiatives are brought into the Orthodox Church, kind of injected into Orthodoxy by people who already had some kind of experience of living ecologically. I want to give you another example from the United States, and it's another initiative that was kind of brought to the Orthodox Church, again, by converts. And the project is run by Rachel and Jacob. So they are a couple in their 70s. They have been Christians for their whole life, but they changed the denominations every 4 years, as they told me. Regardless of the church they attended, during the last 15 years, they ran a project called Growing Gardens for Life. They fundraised money to arrange trips and organized volunteers from their church communities. And what they did is they visited Protestant and Catholic orphanages in Mexico, where they taught children to grow their own food. So they would go several times a year, spend some time in Mexico visiting different orphanages and helping them to prepare the land and to grow their own food. During the pandemic of 2020, Jacob and Rachel converted to Orthodoxy, and they brought the Gardens Project with them. But they no longer visit orphanages in Mexico. They rebranded the project into Monastery Gardens. And now they organize people from their parish and go to Orthodox monasteries to help them either set up a new garden or to tend for existing gardens. In the photograph, you can see me after the digging party. So together with a group of volunteers from the parish, we dug blackcurrant bushes from Jacob and Rachel's garden, and they later brought it to plant in a nearby monastery. As the couple say, some monasteries are interested in this project because they want to achieve food sovereignty. Jacob and Rachel visited about 8 monasteries in the United States and currently closely work with 3 of them on growing gardens. And again, like if we zoom out a little bit, my observation is that environmental inspiration comes to Orthodox communities kind of from the outside. It comes from German sisters in the monastery who subtly change the habits of the Greek community. It comes from American converts who bring already existing eco-projects into the Orthodox Church. It's not fully accurate to say that converts bring ecology to Orthodoxy, but what I mean is that we're talking about people who come from kind of more modernized societies or who share the values of modernized societies, including a stronger focus on environment protection. Now, coming back to the Green Parish and the Eco Monastery that I've described, another difference between them is that the Green Parish in Greece openly declares its involvement in the ecological project, while the monastery actually avoids the green label. While the nuns indeed frame their everyday life in categories of environmental care, they don't like to be called ecological, and they generally avoid the eco label. For example, the abbess told me that they don't advertise their goods as organic products, and this is the monastery store at the gas station, where they sell what they produce. But instead, they write traditional monastic products. And the abbess explained that many monasteries do live ecologically, but they don't say it. They don't express it this way because these words are misused politically, and we don't want to be stamped with eco. We don't want to be labeled as politically involved. We do what's written in the Bible. So, on one hand, the monastery is active ecologically. It's mindful about their motivation for environmental action. But on the other hand, they try to distance themselves from the eco movement. And when I told it to the abbess, she corrected me and said, quote is in the slide, "Speaking of monasteries, it's not wise to use movement, project. Better to say everyday life, way of life. These words don't fit what we're doing. We don't do projects. We don't belong to a movement. We are a movement. Many people who do research, who I met in my life, need terminology," she said. "You cannot transfer today's understanding of something to what has been in use for 20 centuries. And she meant monasticism. So I kind of understand her that she's trying to tell me that monastery living is much more, of course, than just living ecologically. And I will develop this idea a little bit later when I talk about the topic of relations and relationship. But here, the question for me that I have is that the clash of emic and etic perspective in the field of orthodoxy and environmentalism raises the question of how do I write about environmental initiatives in the Orthodox Church? If some communities consciously distance themselves from using such terminology, like just even in this case, like, can I use this monastery as an example of an environmental initiative in the church, in the Orthodox Church, or not? And all these kind of things at the bottom of the slide, recycling, upcycling, food sharing, vegetarianism, eco-entrepreneurship, regenerative farming and regenerative projects, alternative housing, all of these eco-initiatives actually exist in Orthodox communities, but they are often not named this way. And that is sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. And therefore they kind of remain kind of hidden, you know, like if you don't name it this way, then they don't exist, sort of. So what does it, how does it impact how we understand eco-initiatives in the church? So on one hand, for an Orthodox community not to speak the eco-language, it can be a missed opportunity to engage with the youth, to engage with outsiders, to engage with all those people who are involved in environmental action. Because for them, it will be very difficult to make the connection between Orthodox living, and ecological living. Like the link is not obvious for them in this case. But on the other hand, I see that some Orthodox communities, like this monastery, for example, are very much concerned about being labeled as eco and being put in a green box. Why? I would like to talk now about the poor reception of eco topic among the Orthodox and explain why some eco initiatives avoid this topic and why they kind of, as I see, put it in the title of the slide, why they come through the back door. So based on my interviews, I elicited some reasons why environmental discussions may not be well received in the Orthodox Church. One is avoiding political and social issues. I have already quoted the Greek abbess of the Greek monastery who said that they don't want to be involved in politics, right? So ecology is somehow kind of believed to be part of a left-wing agenda, which goes together with other social and political issues, like, for example, gender issues, which the Orthodox Church has some difficulties kind of to address. And that is why ecology is avoided, not because of ecology, but because it may engage individuals in an undesirable discussion of social and political topics. That's one thing. Another reason to avoid is avoid interfaith connections. Again, here, ecology is avoided not because of ecology, but because this topic may bring the Orthodox people in dialogue with other people of other faiths, with other religions, because many ecological initiatives are interfaith initiatives. And I'd like to quote one of my informants in the United States who explained why he wouldn't go to an eco-retreat organized by a local Orthodox initiative. This is what he said. I wouldn't go to this trip because they take turns praying. So you get a Protestant, you have a Catholic, and you have to listen to someone praying Catholic prayers. I don't want to do that. I'm not against it, but I don't want to pray in that way. It's just once you experience Orthodox prayer and you reverse yourself in the sacraments, then anything else is foreign. It's foreign, strange. So, I mean, it's very interesting that at the same time, the topic of environment is very actively used by church leaders, for example, for ecumenical dialogue. Everybody knows about Patriarch Bartholomew, who is known as the Green Patriarch. So he regularly gives talks at interfaith events and ecumenical events, and he talks about environment. And I mean, this is kind of understandable. It's something everyone can relate to, and it doesn't require dogmatic agreement with other churches. But for some Orthodox believers, this is the very reason to avoid the topic of a kind of ecology. Another reason is eschatological understanding of faith. The common critique is that eco-projects emphasize environment over Christ. As one informant noted, I quote, Orthodox people have a more, let's say, liturgical, eschatological understanding of their faith, something that is coming from the future, not something that we have to do right now and practice right now in history. Another reason is indifference, and this is very well shown in the results of the World Values Survey by Ronald Inglehart, where you can see that environmental concerns are on the agenda of more modernized societies and are not to be expected in societies with strong traditional and survival values. In most cases, it's society that shapes the church and not the other way around. So basically, like if society is not interested in ecology, so will be the church, and not very much interested in ecology. And you can see it. In Greece and even in the United States, because if you check the cultural map of Ronald Inglehart, then the US and Greece fall behind those Protestant countries in Western Europe. Of course, there can be exceptions. So I mentioned this metropolis in Greece, which tries to make a systematic change and have a formative effect on the local community. But again, it's rather an exception. Another reason that was voiced in interviews is ignorance. As one informant said, just people are ignorant and they haven't taken on board the ideas of patriarch because people are not educated to understand the wonderful idea of the ecumenical patriarch, and they are not ecologically aware. And this is something that was, again, like repeated a lot in different interviews. And finally, someone mentioned donations. As one informant told me, church leaders avoid ecology because it may affect donations, including from some big donors who work in fossil fuel industries. So what I did, I talked with Robin. Robin is the leader of one eco-initiative in the United States who said that many priests don't promote environmental topics in their parishes because they are not interested or because their bishops are against it. And when I asked Robin, like, how does he deal with it? Because he is an eco-activist in the Orthodox Church, right? So he said, this is kind of his solution. You work with those who are most receptive, and you start there and let them talk about it. And you come through the back door. Another question I wanted to address in this presentation is, what does Orthodoxy bring to the discussion about environmental issues? What makes eco-initiatives specifically Orthodox? Like, how are Orthodox eco-initiatives different from, let's say, Catholic or Protestant or anything else? And based on my interviews, I elicited, let's say, two themes. Let's talk about the Eucharist and about asceticism. And speaking of the Eucharist, I would like to illustrate this with these icons, which depict the creation of the world. And I took them in this ecological monastery in Greece I've been talking about. So you see day 4, creation of the sun and the moon to separate day and night, creation of birds, and day 6, creation of animals, man and woman. And what was unusual for me is that you see an icon without any saints or without Christ. You kind of just have this little hand of God in the corner. That was very unusual to me, to just kind of, to me at the beginning was like, there's nothing in the icon. And then I realized, oh, okay, there's moon, there's sun, there's land, there's animals, and so on. According to Greek theologian Ekaterina Tsalambouni, the Eucharistic ethos refers to the materiality of the Orthodox faith. It carries the idea that matter can be sanctified. And most importantly, it's not just sanctified, but when it's sanctified, it returns to people in the form of Holy Communion, which they receive, in the form of holy water, which people drink, holy oil that people use to anoint themselves, and holy relics of saints, blessed bread, and many other material things that are kind of sanctified in the church. So the Orthodox faith has a very rich material culture, which is linked with the idea of nature being consecrated. And here I would like to mention the book by Nikolaos Proulis, which is called Priests of Creation. So he kind of mentions there that the Orthodox Church can contribute to the creation of this ecological ethos because it has the idea of sacralization of matter, that matter can be sacrificed. And humans in this process are priests of creation, which means they are kind of mediators between God and nature, and they are called to protect, save, and consecrate nature and the creation. I mean, this is a rather problematic anthropocentric view, again, but we can discuss it later. And another contribution of Orthodoxy I'd like to talk about is asceticism. I mean, asceticism is a huge topic. It has a lot of dimensions, and I want to just focus on one of them, which is fasting. Fasting is commonly understood as dietary restrictions observed on certain days. But in the environmental context, fasting changes its meaning. Well, I talked with one Greek lady who said that, for example, she doesn't eat, I mean, it's Greece, right? It's not Belarus. I mean, eating octopus, eating seafood is common. So she says that she doesn't eat octopus because they are intelligent animals. And speaking of fasting, this is what she said. We fast, but we eat lobsters, which are endangered species. What's the point of fasting then? Real fasting is a period of abstaining, control of one's urges, period of reflection on my role in the world. Although the church actually kind of allows seafood on fasting days as well, some Orthodox believers are guided not only by these kind of religious restrictions, but also by some ethical reasons, by environmental ethics. And the idea of ethical consumption enters eco-theology and becomes important in the religious context, kind of changing it a little bit too. And I suggest that we analyze this quote using Maria Hammerly's approach. So she is a Swiss-Romanian anthropologist who explored various aspects of orthodoxy as gift, according to Marcel Mauss. So what is gift? Gift can be anything. It can be any religious practice or any religious belief. And Hammerly says that the gift can be located on one of three axes. The vertical axis, kind of tried to illustrate it on the slide. The vertical axis describes one's relation, let's say my relations with God. The horizontal axis describes my relations with other people and with the planet and with other parishioners, between the church and the world, like anything on the horizontal level. And the longitudinal axis describes relationships with past and future generations. So let's say, what do we pass over to the grandchildren? That would be the longitudinal axis, or the Orthodox tradition that we have received from Holy Fathers, that also would be the longitudinal axis. And what Hammerly does, she mentions, here we kind of see that what Angeliki, from the interview, what she offers to kind of reorient understanding of fasting from my own individual spiritual practice, kind of fasting because out of obedience to God. She suggests to kind of reorient it to the horizontal level. You know, I need to control my urges and reflect on my role in the world on the horizontal level, kind of think and be responsible in relation to other people and the planet. So Hammerly mentions Orthodox theologian Elizabeth Theokritov. And Elizabeth Theokritov once criticized an important church document on fasting. It was a 2016 Holy Council's document on the importance of fasting and its observance today. So this is what Elizabeth Theokritov wrote, an Orthodox theologian. She said, one's fasting practice has tremendous effects on others, as fasting is never done individually, but always in relationship with God, with each other, and the environment. This means that the Church, in advocating for fasting, must have in mind not only its own members, but all of humanity. The document which she criticizes, could do more by serving as a venue for the Orthodox Church to take the lead in raising awareness and fasting not just as a spiritual benefit, but as a communal benefit. Again, like we see that contemporary theologians, such as Elizabeth Theokritov, suggest to reorient fasting from an individual practice on the vertical axis, just my relations with God, to a collective practice on the horizontal axis. And thus kind of, she kind of attributes it a rather utilitarian secular value. So fasting is seen as a means to slow down the material degradation of the planet. So if we kind of zoom out here again and think, so what does Orthodoxy contribute? What does Orthodoxy bring to environmental discussions? I note that it doesn't bring anything kind of radically new. It doesn't suggest or doesn't insist on any innovative radical actions. Last summer, actually, I took an online course which was offered by Elizabeth Theokritov. It was a course on Christianity and ecology, where she taught about ecology through the lives of saints. And before the course began, I was like wondering, okay, what kind of saints are we gonna discuss? What kind of saints are we gonna study? Maybe there will be some little known saints who talk about ecology, or maybe there will be some kind of forgotten saints, some not very famous saints. But it turned out that during the course, we studied all the very popular saints, Saint Basil the Great, Saint Maximus the Confessor, Saint Gregory of Palamas, which means that Orthodox actors reread the lives of saints, kind of familiar saints, existing saints, from like using the green lens. They rethink the practice of fasting, which is already there, and they don't change it, but they rethink it from an environmental perspective. So basically what the Orthodox suggest is they suggest to revise already existing religious texts and habits from an ecological viewpoint. And I think this is probably what Greek theologian Nikolaos Proulis calls eco-dogmatics. So when he writes about eco-dogmatics, as I understand him, he suggests that ecology is not something separate, like ecclesiology or like Christology, and you just add one more eco-theology. He says, no, it's not about that. What you have to do, he says, is you have to change your method of doing theology. You have to take ecology and develop a new way of doing theology from an ecological perspective. So as I understand, he just suggests to put ecology at the background of everything. And the last topic I'd like to address is relationship. So I have already mentioned Hammerly, and I mentioned Theokritov, who wrote about relations with God, with other people. And in my interviews, I actually also heard a lot about relations and people talking about relations. But I ignored this part of the interview as irrelevant because I was tuned into hearing something about gardening or something about farming or recycling. And when someone started talking about relations, I was listening with half an ear. But then when I received the interview transcripts, I realized that almost everyone was speaking about relations with someone or with God. So what kind of relations are we talking about? I would like to illustrate it with another eco-initiative from the United States, which is called Speckled Bird Cafe. It's a cafe which is run by a middle-aged convert couple, again, American converts, Lisa and Andrew, and they live in a small town in Ohio. So this little town used to have a factory, but it was closed. Some houses were bulldozed, and the town generally feels empty and neglected. The land there is not very good, it's not good soil, but Lisa and Andrew rented several patches of city land to start gardens and grow food, which they use to cook food in their cafe. And this is what Andrew says. When we arrived here, this place felt like a place of abandonment. I started to want to tend that land. So this sort of desacralized land has slowly, over time, for me at least, has become like a sacred place. So the Speckled Bird Cafe is a regenerative project. I have a new slide with new photographs. Lisa and Andrew came to abandoned land and started cultivating it. All food for the cafe is grown locally. And Lisa and Andrew say that they do it on purpose because they want to restore the connection between food and people. And they want to restore connection between people and the place. Cafe works on a pay-as-you-can model. There is a menu, but there's no prices in the menu. So, and again, the couple says that they do it on purpose again, and the aim is to restore relationships between people. Lisa says that they live Eucharistically. And Andrew continues by saying that gardening is a way of praying for him and restoring the right relationship with God. He shares, our work is always probably gonna remain very small and probably hidden in certain ways, in the sense of it, first and foremost, has to be for the transformation and the regeneration of our own internal landscape. It has to be deeper than just being better at recycling. And this is the final paragraph of my presentation. So here, what I see is that relations or relationship is an important topic in religious and also non-religious ecological initiatives. If you remember, I told you that I have almost completed the Laudato Si Animators Catholic course. And actually, during that course, we also talked about the importance of establishing relations in the local community. We talked about the importance of good relations with neighbors, like physical, like real neighbors. And it was kind of called as part of integral ecology. And if you check, let's say, secular initiatives, like if you go to check up eco-villages in Europe, you will see that they offer a lot of trainings on different kind of relationship things as well. So when it comes to environment, surprisingly, it's not only farming and recycling that can be the common ground, but also this kind of need to establish relations. And as Andrew said, to be deeper than just being better at recycling. I hope it didn't sound like a sermon. This is the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening. Huh?
Thank you very much, Ksenia. Thanks a lot. Marco, the floor is yours now.
Thank
So
you.
feel
Thank
free
you.
to-
And first of all, well, my deep gratitude goes to Dorota and Ksenia, of course, for this invitation. And thanks again to Ksenia for that was a very interesting talk, which provoked in me some reflection that I hope not to be insignificant, which I would like to share with you now. Then leaving the space for some questions to Ksenia, and I would reserve the right to ask one myself if I don't take too much time for the presentation for the second part of the conversation. And I will say that it's possible to very profitably reason and argument about what Ksenia has argued by moving on three different, but I think complementary levels that are at first the relationship between institution and grassroots actors, then the pluralistic dimension of the relation between ecological and religious discourse, and finally some brief consideration about ecological epistemology, religious creativity, and instrumentality. So first of all, the relationship between religious institution and grassroots actors. Well, a significant difference can be seen between well-established institutionalized religions, that are those who are commonly referred to as world religions, and more contemporary religious groups that have emerged within conceptual, doctrinal frameworks that often diverge from those grand narratives of monotheistic religions. And this is mainly the field I research on, because my focus is on new religious movements, new spiritualities or contemporary spiritualities. In the first scenario, the one of world religions, we are referring to religious institutions and actors who have encountered not only an understanding of climate change and current environmental issues and dangers, but also, and most importantly, a unique cultural atmosphere that has elevated the natural sciences as an unquestioned source of authority and ecological awareness as a crucial aspect of social acceptance. This particular complex of processes occurred by challenging alternative system of rationality that relied on myth and symbolism, and so in the domain of religion, instead of scientific logic, while also re-evaluating the meaning and importance and the centrality of human beings within the broader perimeter of Earth ecology. So on the other hand, a lot of contemporary religious movements that with a major emphasis on the environment have emerged or developed in their influence after World War II. So these groups were shaped mainly by the countercultures of the 60s and the 70s, which were characterized by a strong environmental awareness and also the advocacy for various rights, as we all well know. So therefore, a relationship between religious institutions and practitioners and grassroots practitioners has a distinct advantage in this scenario, in the one of new religious movement, as they do not need to develop a kind of intricate or difficult framework to adapt a long-standing past to new cultural circumstances. So Laudato Si is a kind of a very comprehensive effort by one of the major global faiths to establish a well-organized ecological dialogue among the central institution, the prevailing cultural setting, and the emerging perspectives of grassroots actors. So this is a reflection that leads us directly to the second order of reflection. And I think that I know that Ksenia had an involvement also in Plum Village activities. And this implicitly addresses this level of consideration, which is the recognition of multiple, of diverse theological perspectives grappling with the imperative to embrace environmentalist solutions. Thich Nhat Hanh, is a monk from Vietnam, is widely, and it's the founder of Plum Villages around the world, is widely recognized, at least in Buddhist studies, as a very prominent figure in the rise of the so-called engaged Buddhism, that is a modern form of Buddhism that places a heavy emphasis on social ethics, environmental awareness, and in promoting fairness and equality in some way. So contrary to commonly held belief, Buddhism, especially through its written teachings and earlier practical applications, has not, at least historically, manifested itself in a clear ecological expression. The grounds for this sense of this idea of an intrinsically green Buddhism are too extensive and elaborate now, and may not even be of interest in this place. However, it is important to note that this perception is a contemporary concept that can be attributed to the influence. One of the main influence is that of Thich Nhat Hanh. However, it is nowadays challenging to come across a Buddhist organization that does not openly declare itself as deeply and fundamentally committed to environmentalism. Although this is primarily true and primarily observed in Western countries. So this is just a single and quite simple example demonstrating in some way how all modern religious and spiritual groups are currently presenting their own ecologically responsible viewpoints, standpoints, validating or strengthening them by applying different conceptual frameworks. And so without considering such kind of perspectives, the institution's perceived danger is that of slipping behind and becoming in some way outdated or irrelevant. There is a very interesting book by a leading expert, scholar of religion in Italy, that is Marco Ventura, that is called In the End of God, that try to figure out how religions of future may appear or be. And he notes that the ecological awareness will be one of the three main topics in determining the religion that will survive the actual period. Now, let us think something. Let me address the third and last aspect, which is the intersection of ecological epistemology, religious creativity, and instrumentality. Embracing an ecological viewpoint while trying to strengthen one's religion's identity necessitates the use of creativity to negotiate those that are potentially difficult doctrinal adjustments. Therefore, we observe, for example, a transformation of the human-centered understanding of most of the Abrahamic religions, or the re-examination of Buddhist sutras that can be more easily adapted to an environmentalist interpretation. And also the redefinition of certain Hindu characters to emphasize their connection to environmental concerns. So these processes occur within a relationship between religious actors and the scientific understanding of crisis, which is based on biology, on climate sciences, on physics, and so on. That is to say that these arguments are rooted in natural sciences and may not be actually accessible to grassroots communities. But which religious institution must mediate and in some way translate. So I think, and I suggest, that future studies on the issue of religions and ecology should account this concept of scientific and religious relation of opacity. It's a relation of opacity. It's the need of a simplification of a very complex reality. So probably new studies should aim to comprehend not only the various approaches to ecological thinking in different religious and or spiritual organization, but also the extent to which these approaches arise from spontaneous awareness, and I suppose this is a very grassroots direction, a grassroots perspective, versus being strategically employed to adapt to the current socio-cultural context. So I'd like to end, therefore, by asking Ksenia whether her research has led to possibly highlight, to detect those, shall we say, spontaneous and or instrumental aspects in the green strategies of the Orthodox community, and how this can be in some way associated with institutional or grassroots dimension. My research on Catholic community and their engagement with environmentalism and ecological thought in some way shows that more spontaneous perspective comes from the grassroots participants, from the grassroots actors, insufflating in some way ecological awareness and ecological demands into the institution. That is quite different, for example, if we think to some new religious movement, for example, anthroposophy, the current of, in some way, esoteric spiritual thought founded by Rudolf Steiner in Austria, as a very distant and native ecological imprint, as Rudolf Steiner himself was writing instruction for farmers in order to be to set a more fertile ground. So in some way it is a native ecological movement. While, for example, another very famous and very discussed new religious movement like Scientology is trying to adapt right now to this kind of imperative, and is trying to develop an ecological, not only an ecological template for doctrines and ideas, but also an ecological language. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, as someone wrote in the chat, it's good that we are recording because I will probably have to listen to your comments one more time to kind of fully comprehend.
Yeah. I would just like to say that thank you so much, Marco. I was muted before, and yeah. So Ksenia, yes, if you'd like to respond to, I mean, you have a question from Marco, but also if you'd like to relate to other things raised by Marco, it would be nice. Just
yes. So yes, I think I would like to address this kind of dichotomy that you brought up between the institutional initiatives and grassroots initiatives, right? So as I understand you in your research, you say that the grassroots initiatives were more spontaneous and somehow kind of more efficient, if I understood you correctly, right? Yeah. I mean, kind of, yes. But I think that in the Orthodox Church, maybe there's also some structural difficulties for these grassroots initiatives to kind of somehow filter up to the top of, I don't know, priest, church administration, or like some kind of higher levels of church management, let's say. So I think that, I mean, first, and this is what I think is valuable about what I have collected during my fieldwork. I have collected some kind of unique first-hand data about initiatives that actually stay off the radar of church official kind of reports or statistics, because these are often initiatives that are run by individuals and not by priests or by parishes. That's one thing. But then another thing is that in many cases, priests know that their parishioners are involved or have some kind of projects, but the priests themselves and the parishes are usually very minimally involved in those eco projects. So I think they kind of neglect this opportunity to engage and use these initiatives to create relations in the parish and really like engage in ecological action. And I think in many cases priests are not interested in it, as one of my informants said, just out of personal reasons, or because the bishops do not really support these kind of initiatives. And that's why, like, even if you have this intention from some people to do something in the parish, these opportunities can be just overlooked by priests who just neglectful. And then another thing is that even if grassroots initiatives kind of try to push hard, it's not so easy to get into the heads of people who take decisions. And I would like to quote one of my informants who said that at the end, we'd have to go up to the top brass and go, the knowledge is at the bottom, but we have to go to the top and educate the top. If you want it to come down, it has to be their idea, even though it's not their idea. You have to plant the seeds kind of in the minds of bishops and priests. They get all the glory, fine, but then it trickles down. So without the support without some structural changes, I think it just will become those sporadic eco initiatives that will not be so efficient if they were carried out on the level of at least of the parish or of the metropolis. That's the example that I gave. Yes, and it's interesting that you talked about Buddhist eco initiatives a lot. So indeed, there is this engaged Buddhism movement, and it's totally fine to be involved in politics and to be involved in social activism in the Buddhist, some Buddhist traditions. But I think it's kind of foreign for Orthodoxy. These words like activism and Orthodoxy don't really go well together. So that's kind of another obstacle. Maybe it's even common for probably like most Orthodox churches. There's some kind of Orthodox ethos that slows down social and political involvement, including ecological involvement. And that is why maybe, I don't know, but maybe if you kind of divorce politics and ecology, when you introduce it in the Orthodox environment, that could be helpful. I'm thinking of another, let's say, kind of, we can call her an Orthodox eco-activist who said, like, her point is not to make ecology political and not to bring it up together with politics. She actually, I remember she said in one of the videos, she said, ecology is not political, and I don't even remember at which point it somehow became political. So if you try to kind of eliminate this connotation, political connotations, then these ideas will be probably received better in the Orthodox environment. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, and this is quite interesting because even the quote, the last quotation was very interesting because I think it pictures the complexity of the field, and also, for example, in Italy we are witnessing a kind of a difficult communication between secular and religious ecological groups and organization. For reasons that are, okay, in some way political, but for the most part are a kind of conceptual different, because secular organization are not very happy in being in some way tied to what they perceive as an ecology that is not based on scientific principle, but is led by the same emotional, at least, when not a completely irrational idea of ecology. And on the other part, religious ecological organization that are not so happy to be involved with secular organization, because they think that this could in some way lead to a strongly biological driven kind of ecology. That is not the idea that, for example, is explained in the Laudato Si, that is the idea of an integral ecology that comprises elements of social justice, social ecology, and spiritual ecology. So they say not, because the secular ecology is just biological, is just material ecology, and we do not want to share activities and links with secular organization. And that's very interesting. I was talking about this topic with colleagues Marcin and Wojtek, and the scenario is very different from Poland and Italy, and this is the complexity that I'm interested in the most. And I think that your research is very helpful in this perspective of trying to get rid of, or better, to better deepen and understand this complexity. Thank you, Ksenia.
Thank you. Actually, maybe I would like to add on this kind of interaction between Orthodox initiatives and secular initiatives. So, I mean, I have a limited sample, so to say, but like from what I have, I see that Orthodox actors see secular eco projects or eco organizations as a source of funding, but some do actually collaborate with secular organizations, but only with the local organizations. So for some Orthodox projects, it's important to engage not only with their church community. Sometimes the church community is literally like minimally involved, like in this cafe, for example, in Ohio or other places. But what they do, because they see that there is not much response from the Orthodox, that's why they kind of open up, and they work towards engagement with the local community of all faiths and also non-religious. And maybe I would like to add here, when I talked with one of the eco activists from the United States, an Orthodox person, he said that because Orthodox are so few there, so he works with all. He works with Orthodox, with non-Orthodox, and with secular people and organizations, and he organizes retreats. So he said that he kind of organizes retreats for Orthodox separately, and for non-Orthodox, meaning for generic Christians, that's what he calls them. So generic Christian retreats can be attended by all people, also Orthodox, but usually Orthodox try to avoid those meetings. And I asked him how he adjusts the program for Orthodox and for generic, let's say, Christians, like for everyone. So he said that one thing is that when you prepare a retreat for Orthodox, eco retreat for Orthodox people, he focuses more on Holy Fathers and quotes from Holy Fathers. When he organizes a generic retreat for Christians or non-Christians, he focuses more on the Bible. And then he says that even in the title, you need to be careful. If you put nature in the title of a retreat, then it might scare away some Orthodox people. So for generic Christians, he can leave nature in the title, that's fine, let's say whatever, Christianity and nature. But for Orthodox Christians, he would put Christ in the title and remove nature, you know? So you have to kind of adjust when you work with different audiences. And that's what I also observed happening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Dorota, we cannot hear you, but I guess you invite people to ask questions.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not good at it. Yeah. So thank you very much, Ksenia and Marco. Yes. Before I invite people, I have one like a little question. Where is the Patriarch Bartholomew in this picture? When we speak about this, you know, grassroots, institutional, all this kind of dynamics, but what kind of influence does he have? Is it like, what is it really? Because Bartholomew, like from what I know, he's like labeled as a green patriarch, right? So and he also like self-promotes as such. He has a whole lot of, I don't know, some connections from with people from various segments of those who work for the environment, right? So but on the other hand, he produces like sermons and so on, situating the ecological issues in a very like Orthodox perspective. So where is he and how, what is his real influence? My question.
Okay.
And then I leave the floor to others as well.
Yes. So maybe I don't have some insider information, but just again, from this limited number of interviews and observations that I have, I think that in my picture, he is somewhere in the level of politics and interfaith relations. So he uses ecological topic, as I said. I think even like this eco topic is even instrumentalized, I would say, by church officials, because he often visits those interfaith events and he gives talks on environment as something that kind of everyone can relate to, everyone can agree upon it, right? So that's one thing. Then he since long, he regularly organizes eco conferences where they discuss these topics, and he brings together people, some eco activists, climate activists, people of other faiths, where he kind of again like promotes the same narrative to people who are actually like on the same side with him, right? And the thing is that even the consultant on ecological topics to Patriarch Bartholomew, John Chrysavgis, in one of the interviews even pointed at it by saying that kind of we address other Christians on topics of environment and they're receptive to it, but who is neglected is actually Orthodox Christians who kind of stay aside somehow. They are not receptive, and the patriarch, yes, I mean he is a politician, right? So that's what he is doing, but somehow his own flock, I think, kind of I don't know, maybe if not the most, but like out of different Christian denominations, Orthodox are like the least receptive to the ecological topics. And the reasons for why his sermons do not filter down like are numerous, but not that some people know about his environmental engagement, but like even from the initiatives that I presented today, some people don't even know, like people who run, let's say, Monastery Gardens project. They know that there is some ecumenical patriarch, but they have no idea, and their motivation is not driven by the patriarch, you know. Of course, retrospectively, some of these initiatives will probably put the quote from the patriarch on their website to kind of bring it more legitimacy. But this is not like kind of the driving force for some of this initiative. So I don't know, like I think sometimes they intersect, but not necessarily. I think that kind of My impression is that Orthodox believers are not his target audience.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm wrong. I wonder what people think.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so people, you are here with us, and we would love to hear your comments or questions.
And see you maybe also.
Sorry?
And see you. And hear you.
Yeah. If you feel like it's fine, because we don't want to exert any pressure. It's Piotr Abramczyk who is, hello.
Hello. Hi, Ksenia, and hi, Marco. Good to see you. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. Especially, interesting for me, those parts on what inspires and motivates Orthodox believers to run ecological initiatives, but also what prevents them or discourages them. I see some similarities with some groups within the Catholic Church as well. And my original question was, but it was partially answered. In a Catholic world, we have this Laudato Si encyclical, which is a big drive towards environmental action. And is there some official Orthodox teaching or some church document that is in somewhat similar or relatable to Laudato Si?
Yes, actually, I made this note because I already wanted to respond to Marco, saying that indeed, like Laudato Si is a point of that gathers people around it, and all these ecological initiatives circulate, revive around this text. Like, even though all those initiatives that I mentioned, it's Laudato Si Week, Laudato Si Course, Laudato Si Anima, whatever, like there is kind of a point of reference in the Catholic Church, which is, you may accept it or not, but like it gives inspiration, and it's like a central point, I think, that the point that brings people together and gives them a point of reference so that everyone can relate to it. This is why. But we have more knowledgeable people from church here, but and not in my interviews that someone mentioned any kind of point of reference that unites Orthodox on the topic of environmental engagement. No, I wouldn't say so. I don't know, maybe the reason is, again, like the church structure. Catholic Church is more kind of centralized, and Orthodox are kind of by themselves, so to say. Maybe this is one reason. But I haven't heard of any like text that would unite kind of people, or any initiative or project in the church that would bring people together on this topic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So other people, if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to ask Ksenia, or just share your thoughts. I know some of you are themselves engaged in some ecological initiatives in your churches. So maybe you have something to say, like from this point of view.
So maybe if I can, hello everybody. My name is Joseph Matuszak. I live here in Warsaw.
Nice to meet you.
I'm a deacon in the Orthodox Church, and so very nice to be here today. And Ksenia, thank you very much for your presentation. I think I have a question. I just wanted to, I'm not an expert by any means on Orthodoxy and ecology, or on the environmentalism within the Orthodox Church. I'm a youth worker by background, and a few years ago we began an international youth organization to connect Orthodox youth. I think to answer a bit the question of I forget who it was just asking the question. I think the challenge, like Ksenia said, within the Orthodox Church is we have no central voice. While Patriarch Bartholomew, his title is First Among Equals, yeah, and generally speaks with the voice of the Orthodox Church. Not everybody follows that voice, right? And 10 years ago, that would have been a challenge, just in general, without that kind of unified voice. It's even more of a challenge now with politics within the Orthodox Church becoming exasperated, especially with the situation in Ukraine and so on and so forth. And so, and Ksenia made a good point that, a fair point, that a lot of organizations, mine to be sure, to an extent, do put up statements or quotes from Patriarch Bartholomew on this issue. Increasingly, though, that becomes dangerous because you take the risk of alienating, a part of the Orthodox world when you associate yourself with one patriarch or another, right? And so it's extremely, for that reason, the structural issues make it extremely challenging, and thus why I think within the Orthodox world, and it's partly my question to Ksenia, I think it seems almost like it's the grassroots route, if we can say, is almost the only thing available to us if we want to do anything pan-jurisdictionally or within pan-Orthodoxy, let's say. And with my organization, which we began, we have an event this summer in Eastern Poland for young people, which is really focused on trying to engage young people more in the issue of ecology. We have so many structural problems in terms of, like Ksenia was saying, how we deal with politics, ecumenism, so on and so forth. But I guess my question, Ksenia, from what you have seen, is that a fair assessment to say, within Orthodoxy, it's pretty much grassroots is the only way that's going to be the only route to get anything done? And I even, my fear is that even with the grassroots, it's almost never going to bubble up to the top of the hierarchy, for all kinds of reasons, for reasons of legitimacy, funding, so is that the only route that we have, or that's available in the Orthodox Church? The only, and then I guess the second question is, if it is, what can be done, kind of independent of official church structures to network those grassroots initiatives, like, for example, and to amplify and echo them, and to multiply them, so I think it's a fair question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for your comment. There will probably both types of projects, both top-down projects, I think will also be there, and there will be grassroots projects, and probably they will have their strengths and weaknesses, each of them. Like, as I said, in case of the Green Parish in Greece, I mean, it's kind of a top-down project, and it kind of has low energy, I would say. Low energy, and there's some other projects in the Greek Archdiocese of America that just have low energy, but because their administration is interested, they are kind of sustainable in the sense that they can run a long distance. So they will probably very slowly, but maybe make some change on the level of of a certain district, of a certain community. Unlike grassroots communities who just do not have, so much resources. So let there be kind of both, and there will be probably both projects. But as for grassroots initiatives, the question is that how much space they are given by their priests and bishops. That's actually the main question, because again, like this comes from one of the interviews. I talked with a person in the United States who runs an eco initiative, and he says that when he's a convert, and when he converted to the Orthodox Church, there he was offered to become a priest, but he declined this proposal because he kind of knew that he would have less freedom to do what he wants, and he wanted to do environmental projects. So yes, you are kind of limited as a grassroots initiative. You are limited by the amount of freedom that you are given by someone who kind of has power over you. So that's one thing. And but as for you say, like, I think that this being decentralized should become the strength of the Orthodox Church. I mean, I think it should be somehow possible to kind of make this decentralized, scattered initiatives the strength. So and it's kind of possible because there will be more freedom. I'm thinking, I'm from Belarus, I'm thinking about protests. Like, you, even if you don't have a protest leader, there is no leader in the protest. This is can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. So it's probably the same with other initiatives. If there is no, as you said, like central voice, you can think of some advantages that you can take from this situation. Yeah. Somehow it should be turned, I think, into the strengths of Orthodox Church, this not being centralized.
Yeah,
But,
thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Another comment or question, anyone? It's Patrick. Go ahead.
Thank you. Not quite, I don't know how to lower my hand now, and I'm just trying to make my video appear. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, I don't live in this. This is just a background. I thank you very much for your presentation. I must admit I'm new to this, and I am an Anglican. I'm based in London, but I have been studying Orthodoxy for a couple of years now. And I was very interested in your comment as to why the Orthodox may not accept this. Because of the political label, or because I was very interested in your comment that they view things eschatologically, because in the course that I'm doing, there is, which I'm doing with Dr. Theokritov, there is actually a Dutch lady from who is from the Reformed tradition, but I can't remember which one, and she was saying that within her Reformed tradition, they approach it from a different angle, as they're expecting the rapture to happen at any moment. They're not concerned with this world because it's going to be dissolved in flame, and so it doesn't really matter what happens here. So there are two currents, I think, coming together, and I was wondering if and you also mentioned Dr. Theokritov referring to the early fathers. I think there is, and this is an impression I've gained perhaps because of the way my studies have been focused, unless and until there is an agreement on the Church Fathers' pronouncements on the theology of creation and the environment, I don't think you will get an Orthodox consensus, because I also used to live in Istanbul, and I did meet the Patriarch on occasion at sort of social events. He exists, as you say, in this political bubble, and what filters down to the faithful in the pews, I think, is there more immediate concerns of the day-to-day, and it'll only be when the pressure comes down theologically from above that it will drive any more engagement throughout the church. It happens in the Anglican Church as well. Sorry, that's an observation rather than a question.
Yes, so I think if we talk about eschatological view, it's like a theological approach to see the situation. But what I presented in Maria Hammerly's research is a more anthropological approach. So eschatological view of everything is to see things kind of in this longitudinal perspective. Like, I get something from the Holy Fathers and I need to preserve it to pass it on to future generations. That would be it. But like we kind of if we follow this longitudinal axis or the vertical one, I fast because out of obedience to God, let's say. So we kind of neglect this horizontal level of my immediate relations with other people, of immediate relations between parishioners, between the church and the world, between believers and nature, so to say. So this is then neglected, and the attempts of this of some contemporary theologians are directed at bringing this vertical perspective or eschatological perspective, longitudinal, something in the future, to bring it into the here and now. That's what they are trying to do, and that's what many Orthodox resist. That's the thing. And speaking of Holy Fathers, I mean, yes, kind of Holy Fathers is again, maybe this is a point of reference for many Orthodox, so that's where you refer to when you speak on any topic, not so much on the Bible, right? But again, like as far as I understand what a contemporary Greek theologian, Pandelis Kalaididis, writes, I think he is irritated by this approach. So kind of no longer Holy Fathers. Let's just create something with our brains here and now, the solution. Because Holy Fathers write about nature, but they don't write about climate change, right? Holy Fathers write about birds and trees, but they don't write about pollution and microplastic. And that is why people say, oh, ecology is a new topic, you know, it's not in the Holy Fathers. So, and Kalaididis, I think, as far as I understand him, he says like, it's kind of again, this back to fathers approach, kind of, let's be more creative and more efficient. That's how I understand the role of Holy Fathers in contemporary Greek theology. There's again like kind of different approaches. Yeah.
There are different schools, but the Orthodox Church is strong on patriolatry.
Yeah.
As the Protestants are on bibliolatry.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I must go, so it's been very interesting. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. There's something Joseph is writing on the chat.
I guess I can just say, so you don't have to, while there's no one common statement by all the Orthodox patriarchs, and of course there's a lot online, and you're all very familiar with it. I just wanted to share one publication that was actually done by the Orthodox in 1995, a resource called Orthodoxy and Ecology, a resource handbook, and it was recently digitalized. It's a little dated because it was originally published in 95, but that also makes the point, though, that the Orthodox have been trying to, I think, engage in a more creative way, and not only going back to the fathers always, as we were saying, in a more creative way, very early on, in the early 90s. And I think, if I may, sorry, to make a comment, I apologize, and just some of my thoughts. Ksenia rightfully, continually refers to, convert in the church. And that's another great challenge we have in Orthodoxy is the reception of converts, the education of converts, how cradle and converts relate. And sometimes there's and it all depends on the local situation, and how some converts only go back to the fathers. Some converts want to be more creative, and this is just another structural problem I think we have in Orthodoxy, is how we have grafted converts into the story or into the family, that is the Orthodox Church. But so anyway, just observation.
Yeah, speaking of texts and literature on the topic, that kind of, so I think this is the book I can present is almost like this resource book that Joseph has just kind of advertised, but this is a more recent version written by a different person, and this is kind of a guide greening the Orthodox parish, which has different speeches of patriarchs, but also very practical recommendations on kind of how to be green. And it's prepared by an American convert who runs one of the probably most famous eco initiatives in the Orthodox Church called the Fellowship of Transfiguration. And the thing is that these big, like big project, this big book is not sold in many Orthodox parishes. You can buy it on Amazon, but I have found it so the office of this organization is in Santa Rosa in California, and I saw this book only in one Orthodox bookstore somewhere in the back of the bookstore. So these books are not kind of promoted even in bookstores. And when I talked with a guy who runs the bookstore, he said that they sell this book because it's like about the Orthodox parish, but the same author wrote a book about Holy Fathers talking on ecology and environment. And that book is not sold in Orthodox bookstores because it has stories about saints who are not Orthodox saints. So it's not Orthodox enough, kind of. Yeah.
Thank you, Ksenia. So actually we planned this event for 1 hour and a half, but if any of you has feels this urge to comment more on or ask question, feel free to do it.
I'm afraid I had to leave because we have a new meeting starting in a few minutes.
Sorry?
And I'm very sorry. I have another meeting starting.
Yeah,
in a few
we're
minutes,
just finishing.
and I have to go. Sadly, I have to go. Thank you very much. It has been really interesting, and we will meet in a bunch of weeks.
In
so
June.
it will be very nice. Okay.
Thank you, Marco, so much.
Thank you very much. See you. Bye.
Bye. Ksenia, would you like to say a few words as a your closing remarks or closing thank you or whatever? Just feel free.
I just want to say closing thank you.
Okay. Nice. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ksenia. Thank you very much to all who gathered here with us. And those who are in Poland or who will be in Poland at the end of June, you are invited to join us for the Religion and Ecology seminar. Thank you.